Hello everyone, I'm Wendy Hawkins. I'm from the Intel Foundation. I'm Executive Director. I've been with Intel with one foot in the foundation and one foot in education for 21 years now. And one of the reasons I think that I was asked to moderate this session is that Intel has been a longtime sponsor of the Intel Science Talent Search and Intel International Science and Engineering Fair, which is our version of prize philanthropy. And certainly as I was preparing for this session and having the opportunity to chat with these gentlemen, it has sparked a great many thoughts and possibilities in this arena for us at Intel. So I hope that you will find the subject and the brain power that we have here on stage today equally as useful and interesting and exciting for all of you, which I think it will be. In case you didn't read the sign outside the door, you are here for the Turning Point, Disruptive Connective Technology, Crowdsourcing and Incenting Innovation, which is a rather long-winded way of saying that we're here talking about prize philanthropy, competition philanthropy, crowdsourcing, and as Tom Kalil was suggesting, paying for results rather than putting out money in anticipation of what we hope will happen with our grants. Our plan for this session, we will have each of these gentlemen will speak for 10 minutes describing the key points about their experience and expertise, and then we'll have most of the time we hope dedicated to Q&A with all of you. So I hope that you're taking notes of the questions that you want to ask. I have a few questions teed up to get things rolling, and I've not promised to be gentle, so I hope that you won't be either, because I think that will keep the discussion lively and interesting. So I'll begin by introducing all three of our speakers, and then I will ask them to speak in sequence. We'll have Peter on the far right, on my far right, your far left, speak first. Dwayne sitting next to me here speaking second, and Tom Kalil will speak third. So Peter Diamandis, for those of you who have not met him yet, is Chairman and CEO of the XPrize Foundation, which leads the world in designing and incenting prizes to drive radical breakthroughs for the benefit of humanity. He and his company are international leaders in commercial space arena. He's founded companies such as Zero Gravity Corporation, the Rocket Racing League, and Space Adventure, so you'll detect a theme there. There's much more about Peter that I could say, but I'm going to leave it to you to read about him because I'd rather reserve the time for him to talk than to talk about him. Dwayne Spradlin, similarly, is the President and CEO of InnoCentive, which is the global leader in challenge-driven innovation, which operates with two goals: to find new ways to unleash and focus human potential on solving daunting world problems. And they've taken on some humdingers and have more teed up. And defining the role of leadership in driving change in our business and culture. Tom Kalil is here as something of a hometown boy. He is currently working as Deputy Director for Policy for the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, and he's Senior Advisor for Science, Technology, and Innovation for the National Economic Council. But he's on leave to the White House from UC Berkeley, where he was the Special Assistant to the Chancellor for Science and Technology at UC Berkeley. So these three gentlemen have been coming at prize philanthropy and competition philanthropy in different vectors, but have collaborated and have become good friends and have worked together to professionalize this arena and this means of bringing philanthropy to bear in ways that have the potential to really change the world in new and exciting ways. And I'm sure that's why all of you are here in the room, is to hear from them. So please, let's begin. Peter. Great.
And Wendy, let me echo what you're saying. I think the three of us represent three parts of the ecosystem and are really excited about providing a new set of tools to philanthropy to do good work. Ultimately, we're living in a day and age where individuals can do literally what large corporations and governments could do before, empowered by technology, AI, robotics, computational systems, embedded networks. We are literally small groups able to build billion-dollar businesses in a year. I mean, the velocity of growth has never been like this before. Small groups can, in the case of the Ansari XPrize, a group of 20 people, 26 people, can build a spaceship more powerful than 1,500 government employees could do for 30 times the budget. We're empowered to do these things. Now the question is, if you have this much collaborative energy, this much technology, this much capability around the world, where do you point them? Where do you take this energy? Because there's a lot of people who have been successful who want to become significant now. How do you take their energy, their power, their capabilities, and focus them on world-changing missions? And so that's how we think about incentive competitions, about X prizes and X challenges. I'm going to show you a video in the last 5 minutes of my comments that you can, in fact, empower people to go. And in fact, sometimes people need an excuse to go and take on big missions. So if you think about it, one of my missions is to reinvent philanthropy, to make philanthropy far more leveraged and far more efficient. With the right incentive competition, you can get 10 to 50 times the capital you put up spent by the world trying to solve your problem. And you only pay the winner. How great is that, right? There's 10 to 50 times your money spent, you pay the winner, and even better than that, you don't pay anybody who tried and failed, you pay the person who, in fact, pulled it off. So the economics of these are great. And even more than that, we're living in a time where we become so risk adverse. We're adverse to taking risks because if you fail in a big way, if you're in the government, you get a congressional investigation. If you're a large corporation, your stock price may plummet. So by putting up a large incentive prize that's bold and dramatic, if no one pulls it off, we were too ambitious. If someone does, you're a hero. And really, a breakthrough, a true breakthrough, that's not an incremental improvement, a true breakthrough, the day before was a breakthrough, was a crazy idea. I usually have two hands to do this with, I only have one hand today. It was a crazy idea. And so the question is, where in your philanthropy, where in your companies, where in your government agencies do you allow crazy ideas to be tried? Because, I think we're killing ourselves how risk adverse we're becoming. We're all worried about lawsuits here and lawsuits there. And if we're not willing to try these ambitious goals, then we can't really have these fundamental breakthroughs. So incentive prizes do two additional things. They put up a large goal, and they give you global knowledge. You may know a few companies or organizations or people who might try for that goal. You put up a large enough incentive competition, you get people from around the world you've never heard of, from places you've never been, who come out of the woodwork to try and solve your problem. So you have community knowledge now. The second thing is, people, when you constrain the problem in time and money, people are forced to try something brand new because they can't do it the old way. And when they're constrained and they try something new, there are two options. They either fail miserably, which most of them do, but if they succeed, they had to have innovated and driven a breakthrough. Does that make logical sense? So that's what we do and the XPrize Foundation, as I'll show in the video, we partner with philanthropies, with corporations, with government agencies. Lots of people, there's literally hundreds of billions of dollars spent to try and move different sized balls around the field, pointy ones and small round ones and so forth, and used to spend to get consumer dollars going. What we try and do is say, listen, as a corporation, as a philanthropy, as a wealthy individual, we'll work with you. We'll get you the global publicity. But at the same time that you get that publicity, we're going to solve one of the world's grand challenges. And with that, Jessica, if we could roll the video, this will give you an overview of the work that we're doing.
greenhouse gas emissions are putting the public's health at risk.
To target the virus, which is believed to have infected more than
slow-motion environmental disaster as an oil spill of hundreds of square miles.
A third of our coral reefs face extinction if steps aren't taken to protect them.
The problems of the world cannot possibly be solved by skeptics or cynics whose horizons are limited by the obvious realities. We need men who can dream of things that never were and ask why not.
What if we could revolutionize energy production, cure cancer, eradicate hunger, go to space to save the Earth? We can by unleashing the human spirit, by setting a target and incentivizing competition. Somewhere in the world, someone will have the solution. When you're looking for that needle in a haystack, the key is to inspire that needle to look for you. Humans are wired to compete. It pushes us beyond our limits and makes the impossible possible. From the 4-minute mile to private spaceflight. We can focus the best minds, create heroes, drive real innovation, make a significant difference, and change the world. Prizes have a long history of inspiring visionaries to tackle challenges that otherwise might have gone ignored. Lindbergh flew across the Atlantic in pursuit of a prize, a $25,000 purse. His success unleashed a $300 billion industry. Inspired by his story, the first XPrize was announced with an audacious goal.
The XPrize is a $10 million competition that will go to the first private team that can build a spaceship.
Private spaceflight was now on everyone's mind. Teams sprang up around the world to pursue the prize.
We're based in Mojave, California.
Israel, Oklahoma,
Romania,
Ontario, Canada,
Manchester, England,
Argentina.
I have never been myself as creative as I have eyeballing this goddamn prize.
Just 8 years later, the world witnessed an astonishing event. The impossible became possible, and the winning team made history. This leverage, posing the right questions, offering an inspiring vision and the right incentive to make it all worthwhile is what makes an XPrize so effective. For the Ansari XPrize, $2.5 million in seed money launched a competition that offered a $10 million purse. The $10 million in prize money spurred an investment of over $100 million by the teams. And the winning team's success led to a private space industry worth over $1 billion. This is how an XPrize works. XPrizes operate at the intersection of audacity and attainability. They're extremely efficient, paying only for results, not just talk or only ideas. They create heroes. They transform public opinion.
You guys made this look kind of easy.
And they launch businesses and industries. The XPrize Foundation designs and operates competitions in 4 major prize groups: energy and the environment, life sciences, exploration, and education and global development. Each group offers XPrizes and X-Challenges designed to generate revolutionary innovation. The cars of the future are here today, thanks to the Progressive Insurance Automotive XPrize. In September 2010, 3 teams split a $10 million purse for creating safe, affordable cars that get over 100 miles per gallon energy equivalent. Proof that super efficiency can be done today in a fast and fun-to-drive way. The Archon Genomics XPrize is an ongoing race to make whole human genome sequencing accurate, fast, and affordable to usher in a new era of personalized medicine. The Google Lunar XPrize now has teams targeting the moon with a new generation of innovative, low-cost robots, bringing us back to the moon for a fraction of the cost of a government mission and stimulating interest in science, engineering, and technology in students around the world. Our X-Challenges operate on a tighter scale than X-Prizes, with purses ranging from $500,000 to $2.5 million, offered in competitions lasting 1 to 2 years. In 2009, Maston Aerospace, in an exciting finish, won the Northrop Grumman Lunar Lander X Challenge. And in 2011, teams will go head-to-head for the Wendy Schmidt Oil Cleanup X Challenge with innovative new technologies to battle massive oil spills. All of these prizes are the culmination of a methodical design process we call visioneering. Our prize development includes the XPrize Labs, where new prizes are proposed, and our highly collaborative conferences like Eye to Eye, where top minds gather to learn about driving innovation through competition. We spend our time posing the challenges that the world will try to solve. The XPrize Foundation sparks innovation and inspires the belief that we can create a better future.
If you know anything about this foundation, you'll know it's a place for letting loose. It's a place to pop and to innovate and be excited.
XPrizes target market failure and define the challenges, not how to solve them. The XPrize Foundation, making the impossible possible, one prize at a time.
So there you have the challenge. And now a little bit more about the infrastructure. Okay, so how do you make a competition that will actually work? And for that we have Dwayne Spradlin.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here. And thanks to Jane Wales and GPF and Wendy for moderating. My name is Dwayne Spradlin. I'm the CEO of InnoCentive. We're a Boston-based company that's been in the field of open innovation for 10 years. Our core belief is that crowdsourcing, what we call open innovation, is transformative. For the first time in human history, we're connecting the world's creative, inventive, brilliant problem-solving capacity on a nearly planetary scale, and putting those resources to work on problems that really matter. Importantly, and this is key, the transformation comes from both solving the problems that matter, but also institutionalizing this incredibly powerful new engine of innovation. We need to tap all of the available resources available worldwide for our most pressing problems, and also as part of the standard part of advancing our mission every day. These can be very large kinds of prizes and problems, and they can also be smaller ones that tie directly to what we do every day as organizations. We see a prize competition as an event, but your organization needs more than that. You need a capability which delivers access to new ideas and real-world solutions on demand. And the best news is that these capabilities, networks, and problem solvers are relatively inexpensive, and they're available today. My goal in these 10 minutes is threefold. I want to introduce you to InnoCentive's model, not to sell you an InnoCentive's model, but to provide examples of how these can work on scales appropriate for your organization. I want to discuss the role of diversity and what we call the long tail effect, and I'll use an example to help explain that. And then I'll provide some examples and suggestions for how organizations can actually get started in integrating these capabilities into what they do. InnoCentive connects organizations to problem solvers all over the world. We've worked with businesses in most industries, government agencies like NASA, and we've been working with the not-for-profit sector since 2007, with organizations like the Rockefeller Foundation, the International AIDS Vaccine Initiative, the Global Alliance for Tuberculosis, and many others, including some in attendance here like Relief International. In our unique approach, which we call challenge-driven innovation, problems are analyzed and structured as well-defined challenges. Framing the challenge is vital and requires a substantial amount of effort and analysis to do well, much as Peter said. We manage the entire process from formulating the challenge to transferring intellectual property when that is an important design element of the program. These problems can be technical, strategic, or operational, but they must be exceedingly well defined. Awards in our approach typically range from $5,000 to $1 million, with an average closer to $25,000. We deliver solutions in over 50% of cases, winning solutions in over 50% of cases, and that versus for those of you from industry, that versus an average of about 8 to 18% in industry. So in fact, we're able to solve problems at a higher rate typically than most existing innovation organizations. We achieve over 80% success when we're looking at the not-for-profit industry in particular, and I'll explain that difference in a few minutes. More than 250,000 registered solvers belong to our network today. We have scientists, policymakers, social entrepreneurs, teachers, and doctors. 61% have masters or PhDs, and they come from over 200 countries. We call this group our global solver community, and it's considered the world's preeminent problem-solving network. We reach an estimated 12 million people through our partnerships with organizations like Nature and The Economist, and that doesn't include all of our social networking activity. And I'm thrilled to announce for the first time today that our new partnership with Popular Science, which introduces more than 2 million more inventive minds to the mix. Let me demonstrate a few of the critical concepts in crowdsourcing and open innovation to sort of make this very real. How many of you are familiar with Chris Anderson's long tail? A few of you? Okay. So Chris Anderson recognizes he was trying to explain why Amazon.com ultimately had to win out over bricks and mortar bookstores. What he recognized, he described as the long tail. If you kind of think about a graph that sort of looks like this from your perspective. And what he recognized was that bricks and mortar bookstores, in effect, could only afford to stock so many books. Well, in reality, most books sold aren't the best sellers on the list. Most books sold are every other book. The problem is you don't know which books will be in demand that day. In effect, Amazon.com, because it was a virtual bookstore, was able to warehouse essentially every book in print. That means they could capture the lion's share of demand. And all of a sudden, when you're a bricks and mortar bookstore, you're faced with the reality that you can't compete because you can't sell enough books to essentially win out at the end of the day, particularly in a competitive market. The long tail of innovation is very similar to that idea. If you're an organization and you're trying to staff skills and capabilities to go after certain kinds of problems, your problem is you can only stock so many. There's only so many spots on the shelf. What you really need to solve the most difficult problems are access to diverse capabilities, skill sets, and backgrounds from all over. That long tail of innovation is the piece that you need to get to that you could never do on your own. Hence the internet, a connected world, and the ability to do that through networks like InnoCentive and others. So this process of of accessing diversity, accessing that long tail of innovation is critical to this process. Let me give you an example quickly. So we worked with the Oil Spill Recovery Institute, and this is a story that we tell quite a bit, but most people have enough in the way of background to appreciate the problem. After the Exxon Valdez spill, there was 80,000 barrels of oil sitting at the bottom of Prince William Sound. The problem is it's in subarctic waters. What happens to things that are thick like oil when they get very, very cold? They act like solids. You can't pump them. So they've got barges all set up to move the oil from the bottom of Prince William Sound, but the oil essentially acts like a solid. After 17 years of working with research, the oil industry, and others, we put the problem on the InnoCentive network. Within 60 days, a construction engineer from the Midwest recognized that keeping oil in a liquid form that wants to be solid is a lot like trying to keep cement or concrete liquid when it wants to set. In the construction industry, you use machines that vibrate the concrete very quickly. Rods go into the concrete, you vibrate it quickly. That's what keeps it liquid while they pour the foundation. He essentially, the winning solution in this case, which won him $20,000, was to take off-the-shelf construction equipment with very specific modifications and vibrate the oil into viscous form so they could pump it through the barge systems. 60 days, $20,000 after 17 years of research. That's the power of crowdsourcing innovation. One other point. When we talked about that long tail, what organization would have ever known to go to a construction engineer in the Midwest? You wouldn't know to go there. You couldn't go there. In fact, what you need to stock is every book in print. Make sense? Okay. So I want to leave you with a few thoughts on how you as an organization may be able to sort of capitalize on these capabilities quite easily and maybe avoid some of the pitfalls. So first and foremost, I think it's really important to examine your mission. You know, and really ask yourself, and I mean this lovingly, are you advancing your mission every day? Are you moving the ball every day? Are you having the impact you want to have and that the donors and the people you're trying to help deserve? If not, there's probably opportunity to innovate your systems, whether it's in the design of your system, technical innovation, or others. But identifying those problems that matter in your world that will move the needle is critically important to really effective prize or incentive-based innovation systems. As a leader, ask why constantly, right? Why? Break the big problems into smaller pieces and understand the context of each piece. Get behind the root causes and build up to the problems that matter. Understanding which problems actually impact your outcome and your goal is critically important. Frame the problems into well-defined challenges. Doing this is vital. Does your challenge address key questions like these? What do we know about the problem? Should we dissect it into smaller pieces? What strategic levers does it support? What is the impact and how will we measure that impact? What specific criteria will determine success? What audiences should we target? What will the solution be? How will the solution be deployed into the field? Is implementability designed into the challenge itself? Running these programs and getting a solution that meets the criteria, but that you can't push into the field, is sort of a wasted effort. And how do we best allocate funds across systems to drive outcomes? In many cases, particularly when you're talking about, for example, developing drug therapies for developing countries, the problems are very complex. In fact, there are multiple problems with different kinds of inducements at each stage that need to be mastered. Some of them are just what the cures might be. Some might be how do we actually manufacture low-cost drugs in developing countries. Different kinds of problems. You need to break these into pieces, solve each of the pieces with the right kind of design and inducement systems. You, as Peter said, can get enormous leverage for your dollars, but you need to very thoughtfully build these approaches. And lastly, in some cases, non-monetary inducements may be very powerful. So there may be very clever ways that you can actually tap people's passion and other resources to make these things happen. Avoid the idea trap. Tendency is to ask for big ideas because that's the easy ask. Most organizations, though, have more ideas than they know what to do with. What you need are solutions. Focus your efforts on well-defined problems and implementable solutions. Permission the organization to take risks and to embrace open approaches. At the same time, hold them accountable. Set aggressive goals and measure them and report the results. Define your ROI equation and tie that to your mission. Don't expect what you don't inspect, as they say. Blend your programs into your institutional branding. Excite your donors that you're focused and using every cost-effective tool at your disposal to move the needle. This can be a powerful tool in enabling transparency, focusing efforts, and delivering impact cost-effectively. For small organizations, funding can be a significant issue and very challenging, no pun intended. The execution costs can run the gamut from tens of thousands to many times that. And yes, we've all tried to make these self-funding. Sorry, no silver bullets. Don't actually essentially assume for now that you'll need to fund these prizes. If you're going to take an open innovation approach and or utilize prize systems regularly, identify talented program managers and resource these initiatives accordingly. These systems must be managed well. They require skill and repeatable process for the best results. There's low-hanging fruit here. The reason that we see 80% results on the not-for-profit side is because we find so many times not-for-profit problems have actually been solved somewhere else. It's just the not-for-profits haven't really had the resources to search for those solutions and make them applicable in their specific space. As a consequence, we're actually able to help them find very cost-effectively, sometimes solutions that exist off the shelf, which is very important. Lastly, I hope that this was helpful and that you can see the passion we have for solving problems that matter. We all live on the same planet, and the work you all do is amazing. If anything around prizes or these incentive-based systems are useful to you, then we certainly achieved our goal. But I, as everybody else here shortly, will be happy to take any questions you have.
Thanks. Well, it's clear that, as Peter said, he's here to reinvent philanthropy. Dwayne's made it clear that he's looking not just at philanthropy, but how we do business. And now we're going to hear from somebody who's really been at the heart of helping to reinvent government. So, Tom, would you tell us what you've been up to?
Sure. So, I've been working for the Obama administration since the beginning, actually starting during the transition, on issues related to science, technology, and innovation, and have been interested for a while in trying to increase the role that prizes and challenges can play in helping to solve some of the biggest domestic and global challenges that we face. My colleagues have done, I think, a great job of identifying some of the reasons that we're excited about prizes and challenges, that you can pay only for results, that allows you to set a goal without prescribing the means or the team that you think is in the best position. Everyone thought that the Charles Lindbergh engine design was crazy, and so if it had gone through a peer review process, he never would have gotten funded. There's opportunities, significant opportunities for leverage. And as Dwayne said, there's a real opportunity to harness cognitive diversity. Work that Kareem Lakhani with the Harvard Business School has done on InnoCentive has shown that a lot of the times the prizes that are and challenges that are being solved by someone who has deep domain expertise but in a totally different field. And as Bill Joy, who is a co-founder of Sun Microsystems, said, no matter who you are, most of the smartest people work for someone else. And this approach of prizes and challenges and open innovation really enables you to be able to take advantage of the distributed expertise of the planet. So what has the Obama administration been doing in the area of prizes and challenges? First, the president released a national innovation strategy in September of 2009 and encouraged agencies to increase their use of prizes and challenges. Late last year, we were able to work with the Congress and pass legislation that will give every agency prize authority for up to $50 million without further approval from Congress. Previously, a few technical agencies like DARPA and NASA had prize authority, but this really, legislation, which was passed as part of the America Competes bill, gives every federal department and agency really broad prize authority. And so another thing that we've done is to create a website, challenge.gov, where you can see all 75 of the prizes and challenges that the federal departments and agencies have been supporting so far. And I've got someone who works for me, Robin Sturm, who has been leading the development of a community of practice within the federal government of program managers across the federal government who have been experimenting with ways to use prizes and challenges. So let me give you a couple of examples of the ways in which different government agencies have been using prizes and challenges. In a number of cases, we've been doing that in partnership with the XPrize Foundation and InnoCentive. So, for example, the Department of Energy provided some funding and technical assistance to do the judging associated with the Automotive XPrize. NASA and the Air Force have pavilions on InnoCentive. So NASA has been posing all sorts of problems that they have been unable to solve with their internal workforce, and have been getting all sorts of creative solutions from citizen scientists and engineers, retired engineers who have come up with solutions that NASA thought was impossible. We recently announced a collaboration with the Aspen Institute for an Aspen Prize for Community College Excellence that was announced by the President, and later this month, Jill Biden will be announcing the 120 semifinalists and the work that the Aspen Institute has been doing to establish some criteria for what excellence for community colleges means. DARPA did this totally cool red balloon challenge where they wanted to demonstrate how social media and social networks could be used to solve urgent problems. In this case, it was discovering the geographical position of 10 red balloons located across the United States. USAID and the Gates Foundation teamed up to demonstrate pro-poor applications of mobile money in Haiti, and there the challenge was to demonstrate 10,000 transactions in 100 new retail settings as a way of rolling out mobile finance in Haiti. A really interesting competition that we funded through the National Institutes of Health, again collaborating with InnoCentive and in this case Harvard, was a question that Harvard asked, which was, what do we not know about type 1 diabetes that might allow us to discover a cure? And they got all sorts of ideas that came in response to that. And the interesting thing was that you had a much greater diversity of people than would be able to write a grant to the National Institutes of Health. So undergraduates, patients, experts in other fields were able to come up with new questions that were so interesting that Harvard was able to then take these ideas and go to a foundation, and now they have the money in place to actually form teams to go after these. So what this suggests is that one of the things that we can start to do is to unbundle the idea generation from the execution stage. Traditionally, when we think about grant making or philanthropy or contracts, we assume that the same person who has the idea is also in a position to execute. And that's not necessarily the case. So you might have a patient who has some, fantastic idea for how to treat and manage type 1 diabetes, but they're never going to be able to get the funding from NIH or some other organization in order to be able to pursue that. So where are we heading on this? We're trying to increase the capacity of the federal agencies to pursue prizes and challenges as a way of advancing their mission and helping to solve some of these big national and global problems. In addition to prizes and challenges, there are other related tools. Another one that I'm particularly excited about is called an advanced market commitment, which you can think about as a purchase order for a product that doesn't exist yet. So 5 countries plus the Gates Foundation said to the pharmaceutical industry, if you develop a vaccine which is safe and effective, we commit that we will buy $1.5 billion worth of this vaccine. So this accelerated the availability of this vaccine by at least 10 years. It's going to save the lives of 7 million kids in developing countries over the next 10 years. And it's another example of paying for results. Not exactly a prize, but it certainly has a family resemblance to the prize mechanism. So people are already starting to think about how this advanced market commitment mechanism could be used not only for other vaccines, but for other innovations that we need, like drought-resistant seeds, for example. So we want to encourage the agencies to be pursuing more ambitious prizes. A lot of the ones that they've been supporting so far have been relatively modest. And also forming collaborations. The government agencies can't do this on their own. They need to be able to tap the expertise of organizations like the XPrize Foundation and like InnoCentive that have been working in this area for a long time. The government is very interested in working with nonprofits, with companies, with foundations who are interested in exploring the potential of prizes and challenges. The last thing that I wanted to talk about is that I think that this whole area of prizes and challenges is a good example of the return on investment associated with philanthropic investment in field building. And let me give you a concrete example of this. There were a number of foundations that were interested in the field of prize philanthropy, and they paid for some excellent work by the McKinsey Foundation to analyze the field of prize philanthropy. And what McKinsey did was a number of useful things. One was they developed a really interesting taxonomy of the different types of prizes and challenges that exist. So they talked about the transformative prizes that the XPrize Foundation has supported, where the goal is really to create a whole new industry that didn't exist, like private space flight. They talked about point source solutions, where you can really specify in advance a particular technological solution that you're looking for. Participation prizes like FIRST Robotics, which hundreds of thousands of kids participate every year. Yes, it's true, someone wins the FIRST Robotics competition, but that's not really the goal. The goal is that you've got hundreds of thousands of kids getting involved in building robots and getting more involved in science, technology, engineering, and math.
Finals in 3 weeks in St. Louis.
Exemplar prizes, where you're really trying to define what constitutes excellence in a particular area. So that work that was supported by the foundation has been very useful to us, because we're able to give that work to departments and agencies, and it's improved their ability to think about how they might use different types of prizes and challenges to advance their work. So one of the things that I would encourage the foundation community to do is to think about the impact of the investments that you can make in field building, and then make that broadly available. So, don't have this be, a report that's done for you that never gets to see the light of day, but, have this be something that enters the public domain, because it will wind up not only informing your work, but wind up informing government policy as well.
Thanks, Tom. I was debating, sorry. So let me ask one question to begin, and then turn it over to the audience to ask some questions as well. The question that is nagging at the back of my head is you three gentlemen have been professionalizing the field of prize philanthropy, which began in, I think, in your descriptions of some of the early days and experiences that you had, Peter, that it was something of an amateur effort initially, that just figuring out what works and so on has been something that you've invested some blood, sweat, and tears in getting to where you are today. And I'm sure that the same is true for the work that you have been doing with InnoCentive, Dwayne, and you, Tom, with the government. What is, you're sitting here in the midst of a bunch of philanthropists who may all be inspired to go off and create prizes and competitions. What would be the worst thing that could happen if they chose to do this, proliferating prizes in great number that are not well designed or are not well executed? What are some of the negative results that could happen? I'd start with you, Peter.
So my interest in this came actually because I've been a child space cadet, and I've always wanted to travel into space, and gave up on NASA being the way I was going to go there. And so I had started a dozen companies in the space arena and read Lindbergh's book one day about prizes, and realized that an incentive prize could really give birth to new industry. And so I became enamored with the idea of incentive prizes and started reading about all the prizes. And what I found was a very high failure rate. Prizes that were posted, never won. Prizes that were posted but were won with empty solutions. One of the great examples is Richard Feynman, one of the brilliant physicists who in 1958 wrote a lecture called "There's Plenty of Room at the Bottom," talking about nanotechnology. And at that time, he put up a prize worth a few $1,000s, a lot of money in the late 50s, for the first person who could build a working motor inside a 1 millimeter cube, hoping that that would spark people to look at new manufacturing processes like Neil and many others do now. Instead, what happened was a graduate student came over with a microscope a month later, and on the objective of the microscope was a working motor in 1 millimeter cube, and he had built it with jeweler's tweezers. And of course, Dr. Feynman paid up, but nothing was achieved in that regard. So the design of the prize, when we launch a competition, the XPrizes have 3 to 8 year time frames, and we're literally signing a contract with all of the teams that has to be valid over the length of that time. And so the design is really, really important, and we curate these prizes in a way that moves the field forward and really drives an industry at the end of it. So design is not easy. We spend a year sometimes designing a prize before it gets launched. So that's it.
Dwayne, do you have any thoughts to add on what can go wrong? Or?
Well, I suppose there's lots that can go wrong. The good news is, we've now built really a body of knowledge, I think, around how to do this well. And we like to think of, again, we call it open innovation, but we like to think of these concepts as essentially a management science. We know a lot now about what motivates people. We know a lot about inducements. These are really behavioral psychology kinds of problems, where what you're trying to do is induce participation in distributed networks to work on really important problems. You're distributing work. So we know what those things look like. I think if lots of organizations do what sometimes I think the tendency is, and that is, sort of a sexy area, let's put a prize out there and see what happens, and they don't apply, I think the knowledge and the learnings that we have to date, then I think you run the risk of, do you know the hype curve? You ever see the hype curve, right? So any new technology makes its way up the hype curve, then it completely fails to meet everyone's expectations, then it drops into the trough of disillusionment, right? Everybody says, it doesn't do what it said it would do. And then it starts to make its way back up again when people realize...
Plateau of productivity.
Plateau of productivity, right? So I think what we run the risk of doing is taking these very powerful tools and maybe misapplying them and taking some missteps. But I'll tell you, I think, you know, we sort of live on the opposite end of the spectrum from XPrize. We're trying to take these at very low cost, you know, short interval durations and putting these tools in the hands of organizations. And, you know, what we think is it's fairly low cost to try these. If you apply the methodology and you apply precision in how you define your problems, the worst that happens is you don't get the solution you want. The best thing that happens is you move the ball, right, a little bit further towards delivering on your mission. So I don't think organizations should be shy at all, but I do think you should take complete advantage of all of the learnings that we've all made our way through over the years. And I think in almost all cases, we're willing to share everything we know because, again, we all live on the same planet. We'd love you not to make the same mistakes that we did.
Great. Well, questions in the audience. Let's start here.
Neil Gershenfeld from MIT. Healthy research communities.
Oh, we have a microphone. Sorry.
Hi, Neil Gershenfeld from MIT. Healthy research communities have a creative tension between competition and collaboration. And they're sort of inextricably woven together. Along with prizes and winners, how do you build communities in these areas? You're finding really interesting participants, but over and over, research progresses with community and collaboration as well as competition. So how do you think about building community?
Yeah, I'll take a quick shot at that, Neil. So in our progressive automotive XPrize, for example, which was to build a 100-mile per gallon equivalent car that was production ready, 200-mile range, safe, fast, affordable, we had 136 teams enter the competition with hardware. And we hold sometimes 1 or twice a year team summits where we bring all the teams together and we'll introduce them to each other. We had a lot of teams merging, a lot of teams collaborating, during the actual finals where the top 26 teams were going on. There was a sense that they're not doing this for the money ultimately. The money is a coordinating function, it's an excuse to raise capital. This is their passion and their mission in life. The money helps offset some of the costs. So for them, the best thing that could happen was they won. The next best thing was someone else won. So you found them actually helping each other out. It was amazing what was going on. And so we try and create a ecosystem among these companies who will share, in that case, drivetrains, energy systems, controllers, whatever the case might be. And you saw a lot of sort of vibrancy there.
Netflix has had some experience in designing a prize. This was about improving the accuracy of the recommender algorithms in ways that really encouraged collaboration, because that was the only way you could win. So you constantly had, because of the design of the competition, sharing of results and people collaborating to continually improve the effectiveness of the algorithm. So I think that if you think about this issue of collaboration and competition in the design of the prize, there are ways to address that issue.
Dwayne?
We had something very interesting happen a few years ago. We had a solver from India who seemed to be solving problems faster than anybody we'd ever seen, and it just didn't make any sense to us. And we do pretty detailed diligence on solutions. Particularly, about 70% of our business is actually commercial business. So for commercial enterprises, they want clean IP transfer and all things you'd imagine. And so upon research, what we began to understand was that this very scrappy gentleman from India had a team of 10 people sitting behind him. He was the business development front end, and they were organizing to solve problems as essentially a virtual unit. So all of a sudden we began to realize they're going to self-organize and collaborate whether we sort of have set it up that way or not. So we have since introduced what we call team project rooms, which actually we borrowed a lot of ideas directly from sort of massively multiplayer online games. And the whole idea is that you can have a team leader, and the team leader can invite people to participate. They all, if necessary, they live behind non-disclosure agreements, or it can be an entirely collaborative environment if it's an open public good kind of a challenge. But we've created all the tools for them to work as teams. And what we found was, they're going to do it whether you want to or not, and in fact, there's enormous benefits to having people collaborate. So, and the next actual phase of that work for us is by the end of this year, we'll literally have lobbies that allow people to find other people so they can essentially aggregate multidisciplinary teams to go after bigger and bigger problems. So, we love the collaboration, but I will tell you, in this field, essentially, at least from what InnoCentive's work has shown us, is first and foremost, you need to be able to get to massive numbers. Then you need to be able to do it securely. Then you need to allow them to self-organize and collaborate. And then you can introduce entirely new forms of engagements of work. But today we're really just getting our hands dirty with these collaborative and team project rooms, and we're already learning things we had never seen before about how they want to work, how to, watching them distribute the awards between them. Some people don't want to join a team if they don't know for sure they're going to get, 1/10 of the prize. Some people don't want to join a team unless they know for a fact that the team leader is going to choose who's going to get the dollars based upon how much effort they've contributed. So there's all kinds of behavioral dynamics there, but we're getting very good at understanding that.
Cool. Jin.
My name is Jin Zidell, and I'm the founder and chairman of Blue Planet Network. We work in the safe drinking water arena. I've heard each one of you gentlemen talk about inventions. Dwayne, you were a oil sucker. That didn't come out quite right. Thomas, vaccines. Peter, spaceships and cars. What I haven't heard you address is innovation and prizes for, I want to use the word process. By that, I'll explain what I mean. In our field, safe drinking water, and we set a goal of bringing safe drinking water to 200 million people over 20 years. At that time, I did not know the average village is 1,000 people. If you do the math, we have to fund 10,000 projects a year. If you're going to fund 10,000, you're probably going to at least have to process at least 100,000 proposals if you have a 10-to-1 request to fund ratio. And doing that, you have 4 challenges: going to scale, coalescing a fractured and siloed sector, providing 100% transparency, and 100% meaningful analytics. But would you fellas have a competition on that kind of prize as opposed to a stuffed prize? I mean, something you can grab your hands on.
Anybody want to take that one?
I'm trying to understand the essence of the question.
So you're looking for a solution. You're looking for somebody to pose a prize to come up with a solution for your processes, not for the clean water solution.
Right, for a process to be able to actually do that kind of massive scaling.
So one of the points that I think is really important is that we're beginning to see a whole family of tools where the emphasis is on paying for results. So we talked about prizes and challenges. I talked about advanced market commitments. Another idea that there's a lot of interest in is the notion of cash on delivery aid. So the idea is that there would be a contract between the donor and the recipient, where the donor is able to specify the outcome that they're looking for, and then they will actually pay if say the developing country or a region within the developing country is able to demonstrate that they can achieve that. So one area where this has been talked about is in the area of education, where right now the emphasis is on attendance, or butts and seats. So to what extent are we getting closer to universal primary education? But what we'd really like is not to have a school attendance outcome, but a learning outcome. So maybe it's maybe Ethiopia would say, okay, we're going to try to demonstrate that we have an increased number of students who are not only attending primary or secondary school, but actually demonstrating mastery of the core curriculum as measured through some sort of assessment. And if we can increase, girls' education by X%, then we would get a certain amount of funding. So this sort of cash on delivery approach could also allow for experimentation for all sorts of different business models, because in the area of safe drinking water, one of the things that people are experimenting with, as you know probably better than I, is the notion of these micro franchises. So you might have a low-cost solution for providing safe drinking water that is owned by in the case of India, the panchayat, the local village. So they're using, UV technology to disinfect the water, and then they're offering safe drinking water as a service. There is a willingness to pay. There's a certain amount of social marketing that needs to go on, and maybe that is the solution that really allows this to scale. So I think that there are cash on delivery, prizes and challenges, milestone-based payments, social impact bonds. We're seeing a proliferation of different techniques where the core insight is establish the goal, but allow for flexibility and autonomy in terms of the best way to achieve the goal.
Next question up here.
Hi, Rita Roy with the MasterCard Foundation. I want to know what happens after the prize is awarded and how you measure success. In terms of one thing, it sounds like it's the solution, but how does the solution then get implemented and distributed, as it were?
Great question. Internally, we talk about the fact that it begins when the prize gets won. So when we design our XPrizes in particular, they're always designed in a way that when it's won, a business begins. The teams retain their intellectual property. What we do is we retain the media rights to the competition so that we can tell the story in a coordinated fashion. You don't want 50 teams all going and pitching Discovery Channel at the same time. And the goal is that when you've got this, we also design the competitions to be telegenic with a bold finish so that when the competition is won, what's happened? If it's a corporation who's funding it, we've delivered global visibility, 10 billion media impressions, front pages in newspapers around the world. If it's a philanthropist, it's creating a legacy for them. But for the teams, what's happened is there's this tremendous market creation. And there's this excitement that occurs, and they're known now. They're no longer a crazy person trying to build spaceships or sequence genomes or clean up oil spills. They're doing this for this noble competition, if you would. So we work very closely to make sure that the regulations are in place. We had to rewrite the FAA regulations, at least in the United States, to allow for private space flight for this competition to occur. We are making sure that there's an education plan, a PR plan, an outreach plan, all of these things, so that, again, the winning of the competition is the birth of an industry.